Hello and welcome to First Post and our continuing coverage on the tensions between India and Pakistan. It's been a very tense 10-12 hours here in India. Overnight, Pakistan launched a military operation against Indian air bases and the Indian military hit back in kind. Since then, we've heard the Indian Foreign Ministry hold a briefing and tell Pakistan that if you don't escalate, we are willing to stop the operation here. The question is, will Pakistan heed India's warning? If not, what are we looking at? Joining me to answer some of these questions is Christine Fair, who is a South Asia expert and an American author. Thank you so much, ma'am, for speaking to First Post. I'm sure
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure you've been hearing all the statements from India as well as Pakistan in the last 10-12 hours about the escalation and about the way forward. What do you think is the sense in Islamabad right now? Are they intent on escalating this further, or was this an effort to basically show the domestic audience that here we've done something and they can claim victory now?
I have to say I am confused by Pakistan's strategy, because one would have thought that after downing the Indian aircraft, the number of which is debatable, but what isn't debatable is that the Pakistanis did down at least two Indian aircraft, that it would have declared victory and gone home. But it didn't choose to do that. It actually chose to escalate. So if downing several Indian aircraft wasn't adequate for Pakistan to step down and look for a de-escalation off-ramp, um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what is. So I'm not actually optimistic that the Pakistanis are going to take this off-ramp that Misri is offering them. And I think part of the reason is the aspirations of Army Chief Munir himself.
You spoke about General Asim Munir right there, and that was possibly the point of this whole operation and the attack in Pahalgam, to consolidate his position and control of the country. Once the dust settles on this, whether it's today, tomorrow, or a couple of weeks from now, do you think he's going to be in a stronger position, or perhaps is he going to face more opposition from the country, if not from the civilian leadership, at least from the people or even sections within the military?
Well, I want to push back on your interpretation of Pahalgam. I think there are other interpretations of what could be going on with regards to the timing, not only just the fact of Pahalgam, but its timing. I think many Indians don't know, or they discount, or yeah, probably they don't know or they discount. In the same way that Indians believe that every explosion in Kashmir has an Indian hand, or a Pakistani hand behind it, Pakistanis believe that every explosion in Balochistan has an Indian hand. And there was a very sanguinary terrorist attack on a train. And so many analysts who are what I would say more neutral and are trying to not pick sides with one of the other countries, uh, also really want to emphasize that when you have both countries engaging in covert operations, you can never really know when you go too far, and there'll be externalities to confront. So there are a lot of explanations about why Pahalgam happened, only one of which surrounds Munir consolidating his position. Although certainly attacks in Balochistan undermine his position. So it's not that they're completely unrelated, it's just that there are other possible explanations. But yes, as you noted, Army Chief Munir is under a lot of pressure. I know from my own experience, it's actually kind of funny. I'm pretty much reviled by the Pakistan Army and its enthusiasts. But over the last 6 or 9 months, I've received a number of outreaches from people who previously despised me, saying, I used to hate you because you hated the Pakistan Army, but now I know you're correct. So I asked them, what is going on? And what they told me to a person was Imran Khan. What caused them to turn in their estimation of the Pakistan Army has been the Army's treatment of Imran Khan. So there's a much broader malaise confronting the Pakistan Army than perhaps Musharraf himself confronted towards the end of his tenure. And nothing puts down criticism of the Pakistan Army like having an Indian enemy to rally around.
And I know you've talked extensively about it, and I think you've written once that the Pakistan Army defines defeat as not being able to challenge India, even if it means that the
Correct.
war ends with them being defeated. I was wondering what exactly,
Correct.
that almost seems like a suicidal strategy to me. So, how do you deal with an enemy like that and from a neutral perspective? Let's keep India out of the
So
equation. On a neutral perspective, how do you deal with that?
it's not suicidal. It's what insurgents do. So I think the quote that you're referring to is I frequently describe the Pakistan Army as an insurgent army. And Pakistan can't defeat India militarily. I think nor can India necessarily defeat Pakistan so easily during the course of a short war because the forces on the international border in the LOC are pretty equally distributed, both in terms of quality and quantity of number of assets. So if you're an insurgent, how do you show that you haven't been defeated? Well, you conduct attacks of the nature that we saw in Pahalgam. What this means is that it is very difficult. I mean, I do not envy India or anyone else that has to confront a country whose foreign policy is that of an insurgent rather than a conventional country that has needs that can be satisfied. And the reason why Pakistan is an insurgent country is that it has needs that cannot be satisfied. Pakistan, and I know many Indians have made a lot out of the Munir speech about jugular vein, Kashmir being a jugular vein that runs through Pakistan. He's not the only one who says it. Every army chief says it. It's very common to hear this during the passing out parade at Kakul. Even every prime minister has said it, right? So there is this very perduring, unshakable belief in Pakistan that Kashmir was not given to Pakistan and therefore partition was not complete when Pakistan was not complete. And so Pakistan cannot complete itself. And this sort of puts the Pakistan army in this position of being an insurgent. It can't defeat India, but what it can do by these attacks is disturb the illusion that everything is okay in Kashmir. And that's another objective that this attack in Pahalgam achieved, was disrupting the idea that the Indian government had been promulgating that peace had returned to Kashmir. And I want to be really clear, the people who are criticizing the Indian government for failures or lapses in security are really out of place. You know, I've been to Kashmir somewhat recently. I was there 2 years ago. I did a very extensive road trip throughout Kashmir. The Indians have deployed a very aggressive counterinsurgency grid. It is impossible to stop every single attack. It just is. That's why it's so effective, because not every attack can be intercepted. And then obviously, as Pahalgam shows, when these attacks do occur, they're devastating.
Let's talk a bit about the United States and its response. We started off with some really mellow statements from the United States, especially from J.D. Vance, who said this is not our war. But this morning, the Americans really seem to have woken up and realized it's getting out of control. Secretary Rubio has been calling General Munir. He has spoken to Jaishankar now. Do you think the Americans realized a bit late just how serious Pakistan was about escalating this?
So let's put this in structural terms. This is a new presidency. So if you go back to George W. Bush, when you had for example, the 2001 crisis that was precipitated by Jaish-e-Mohammed's suicide attack on the Indian embassy, the Indian Parliament, it was totally brand new to India, Pakistan. It had no bench whatsoever of experts that could understand, much less guide U.S. policy during those crises. So here we have a brand new presidency. Paul Kapoor, who had been tapped to be the Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, hasn't been confirmed yet, and it's very unfortunate. Paul Kapoor really has a fine understanding of India-Pakistan problems, and it's just unfortunate that his confirmation did not happen before this crisis. So we have a new presidency. It's completely bereft of people who have a clue about South Asia. And any presidency would be confronted with this challenge. But unfortunately, President Trump has not staffed his cabinet with people who are competent. Instead of choosing subject matter experts, he has chosen to staff his cabinet with sycophants. And unfortunately, Vice President Vance is also very ignorant of India, Pakistan, just as ignorant as President Trump is. Now, Marco Rubio is a professional of some sort. He is not the complete zero that so many of his cabinet members are. And actually, Marco Rubio has been engaging India and Pakistan throughout this crisis. It's just that his actions haven't been really heavily reported either in the international or in the domestic press in India or Pakistan. But he's actually been active before this.
So,
But I think it's very disturbing that we have a president and a vice president that's so hands off.
So, do we read this as a staffing issue or do we see it as a lack of political will? Because The Trump presidency seems to be isolationist in just about any conflict and not just the
Correct.
India-Pakistan conflict. So is it really just about staffing, or is there a larger shift? Because I remember Mike Pompeo was
Right.
Secretary of State in 2019 and he wrote extensively about some engagements that happened during the last military confrontation. So how do we see this?
So I think that you're right. I think there's partly just a lack of will. And I think it's dependent when you're so completely overwhelmed with a conflict that you don't understand, it diminishes your will to intervene because Trump only wants to do things where he can be seen as being successful, right? And so if he doesn't assess that he is going to be successful, then he doesn't want to undertake an initiative. So I think the lack of will and the lack of capability in this case are related. But this doesn't but nonetheless, as you noted, Marco Rubio is engaging. I can't, as a critic of the Trump regime, I don't get to meet members of the Trump administration. So I can't provide much more insight into what Marco Rubio is doing than what's already published in my domestic press.
Yeah. We are seeing the world powers getting a lot more involved in trying to put pressure on both sides. And India has said it's up to Pakistan. Let's see how Pakistan reacts to that. We are seeing some statements coming from Islamabad, from their defense ministry, that we're not planning to go further than this if there are no further attacks from India. And there's a briefing expected in India just a couple of hours from now. So let's see how things pan out, and let's hope that common sense prevails on the other side of the border as well. Thank you so much, Christine Fair, for speaking to First Post.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye-bye.